Welcome to Happiness in the City. But the hello. Okay. Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara, and we'll talk today about something that we all would like to know, and that is the measure of things. When we are dealing with all kinds of things to evaluate our actions or actions of others, we sort of like mindlessly use our understanding of measures, and we don't really pay attention to whether those measures really are right standards for a particular situation. In technology, everybody has to use right measures in electronics. Otherwise, things will just not work. And in our political judgments, our economic judgments, we use measures. Sorry guys, I'm moving like this, but it's like this. Wait one moment. Oh boy.
What color do you want?
No, because the light on my face.
Here, let's figure that out.
Welcome to Happiness in the City. Welcome to Happiness in the City again. It turns out this light is from the window, so it kind of fits in with my topic today about the right measures and the right ways to understand and enlighten something that is in our lives. So what are the measures? Why is it that we don't think about that concept and we don't really pay attention to it? In engineering, of course, this is a very important focus for building anything. There have to be right measurements. But in our political lives, in our economic lives, we have a lack of understanding of complexity of measures in application to human lives. And I think that is one of the problems. There is so much disagreement in the world today about all kinds of decision making, all kinds of ways to conduct ways of creating peace, And I think that one of the ways in which we cannot really achieve peace in the right way is one of the reasons that we cannot achieve peace in the right way is because we don't know what is the measure of peace. And this can be applied to global matters, to regions, to cities, whole entire continents, countries, individual lives. We have been dealing with a very complicated situation in several nations in the Middle East, in former countries of the Soviet Union, and we apply a very wrong measures to creating peace in those areas. Sometimes the problem is because we don't know what the right measures should be. Secondly, we may be unaware that the measures that worked in the past will not work today or in the future. So we have to really develop ways to think about that concept of measures. And it can be quantitative, it can be in matters of time schedules, regions. This is a very difficult concept. And I think that one of the reasons there is conflict today in the world is because we apply old measures to current understandings of peace. And peace is a concept that comes with light. As you saw at the beginning of my program, I had a difficult situation understanding light sources coming to my face. But light is one of the measures too. Light, what is visible, what is the right measure of light, what is hidden, is the light applied in the right way. So the matter of light is one of the measures. So when we look at today's conversations in politics, we need that concept of visibility, light, and the right ways in which the light is applied. So measures is not only numerical, but also in terms of light, visibility, but also the shape that light creates in our perceptions, in the way we come across to the world, to other people. I think that the problem with today's conversation is caused by a certain disconnection between generations. It is very difficult to communicate intergenerationally today. It was very easy for me. When I was growing up, there was a certain understanding of intergenerational differences and ways to connect to intergenerational learning and inheritance. So when I was growing up, there were, of course, living generations. Many of my neighbors and family members from those times are already in heaven. But there was also there was a very important attention paid to former generations that created the realities that we live in today. And then, of course, there was a context of communication within the living generations, grandparents, parents, children, other people's children. And then the expectation of connecting with future generations that didn't exist at that time yet. So the standard of measures was connected to our biology, to the fact that we do come from family communities, that we have certain genetic makeup, certain things that we inherit, and then the entire focus was on the future, how to have children, grandchildren. So the standard of measures of success was connected to that intergenerational communication and coexistence. And today, this talk is not even present. Maybe a little bit at the margins of communication in some churches and synagogues, but basically, people focus their evaluations on other things like financial incomes, financial success, jobs. Everything is connected with focusing on money understood as debt, as a constant search for ways to repay that debt and survive in the meantime, whether in an apartment or in a house. So the very concept of a family house basically doesn't exist. There's concept of mortgage and the ways to finance it, but if you go to any bank and you say, can you tell me about your ways of helping finance family homes intergenerationally, they would just look at you in a strange way and think that you don't know what you're communicating with. So I think that the way for us to understand peace is to start understanding that there is a great security and safety in that measure of intergenerational interactions. It means creating intergenerational homes, neighborhoods, ways of income at the ground level, at the basic level. And then, of course, other ways of improving our economic lives at other levels. But this foundation is so important that we start feeling very depressed and disconnected if it is missing. So what is missing is that concept and reality of intergenerational housing, intergenerational interaction. And I think that one of the reasons we have a lot of military conflicts in the world is because the mobility of people at the global level became so intense that many ethnicities, many nations lost that grounding. And then they become disconnected from themselves, from their families, disconnected even from the places they move into because they don't know how to connect to people who come from those places. And generally, we have a lot of misery in the entire world over those issues. So how do we recover the concept of complexity of measures for our lives? That's a very important question. And I think that one of the ways is to learn from our ancestors what was successful in their ways of appreciating and treasuring family homes, family houses. I think that that is a very powerful stabilizer for any nation, for any region. And that is ultimately one of the ways to prevent conflicts and military invasions, because they would appreciate the stability of their own intergenerational houses and their neighbors' intergenerational houses. Today, the market became so disconnected from this measure that the value is just applied to territory, not to a house. A house is a dispensable thing in that way of thinking. A house is subject to being demolished or moved somewhere else if it is movable. It's just like not relevant for current ways of developing houses, and the focus is always on something new, even if it's just very temporary. So I think that that is one of the reasons that people lose trust in themselves and in their neighbors. Because if all that matters is territory, and it can be traded, it can be polluted, it can be developed with buildings that are very highly priced or that only accept those who can pay for them. If everything becomes measured by standard of money based on debt, then this stability of human life that is essential for our health is destroyed. I came to the conclusion that we should have two ways of looking at value in our ways, and that we have to develop a concept of treasure that is based on intergenerational housing. With this would also come vision of financial treasure based on gold, because gold is a form of stable measure for value and wealth. Debt comes and goes. People pay debts, people take credits that they cannot afford. This is all very unstable. Whole governments are covered with debt demands that makes them paralyzed. We have today a situation in the United States of America where the government is partially under shutdown over questions of money that is based on debt, not over stable wealth like gold, but over money that is circulating in a payment system. In this particular case today, in the ways the health institutions paid for their medical services and over who gets those medical services, who should be eligible. So basically, it's a conflict between a huge debt of the government and demands of life, which is health. So the government has difficulty reconciling both the medical suppliers and patients who need health, because the entire system is based on understanding payments as a form of debt and credit. So how to come out with this? How to come out of this difficult situation? I think that we have to ask God to show us how He would solve this governmental shutdown, how He would help all of us create a certain vision that includes stability of governmental authority based on intergenerational houses and based on gold as the treasury that any government would need to create a base that is not subject to credit and debt. So we would have to have a sanctuary of the intergenerational family connections, but also that the government would have enough gold to deal with in situations where credit debt connections become ways to destroy the government, because this is what is happening right now. The government is virtually defenseless from being destroyed by credit debt situation, not by some sort of revolutions or bad politics, but by the mechanism, the system that created disconnection between permanent, continuous value that the government can rely on, and that constant mobility of credit and debt. So I ask the Lord to show us that vision and that light in the United States of America, because that's where I live, but also to show to other countries how to create stable peace in the world based on His commandment to honor our mothers and our fathers. In other words, to honor the family houses. I don't know how to do it in the current context. Most probably you don't know to do it too. So I'm asking for brand new knowledge to give us to the current living generations, that we will be able to resolve the difficulty that is right now very threatening to all of us, because we all depend on good functioning government and good functioning financial system. So I ask God for that wisdom, and I know He can do it. I grew up in a city that has survived 1,000 years continuously, Gdansk, Danzig, in Poland, right next to the Baltic Sea. And that city has crown in the logo, crown, two crosses, and two lions. Lions represent strength, crosses represent immortality of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, caused by his resurrection, and the crown represents a way to elevate us to divine authority. So let's trust that that ancient way of having unity through the divine connection of money that is here on earth with money in kingdom of God, that this will be the solution. And I ask God to teach us how to do it in the current situation. In the meantime, I ask him to give us his divine credit and bring healing and mobility to American governments through that divine Roman crown from my city where I grew up, and let there be peace on earth.